Yes, everyone, welcome back to the Irish Hotspur. It's Jack here, and I'm going to be talking about why I think EZE would be a no-brainer signing for Spurs this summer, and I'm going to be breaking down into two quick parts for you. First part being just why I think he's a terrific player, what makes him so special, why I've been such a big fan of him for some time now, and what quality, what problems he would be solving for this Ange Postecoglou squad, some of the problems that we had identified from that last season. But then also the other element of why I think this is a no-brainer is the business side of things, and I must stress that I think what's more important is why he fits in as a player, what makes him a good player. That's what's always more important. But I think this is a move that should be easier to get done than some of the other 60 million, 70 million pound players that Spurs are to be linked with this summer. A lot of the roadblocks, a lot of the obstacles that normally are there in trying to sign such a high profile player, I actually don't think exist or actually have been knocked down ahead of time for us in this deal. So it actually should be pretty much inexcusable if Spurs are really interested in this guy. If Spurs really look at this as a high priority signing, I think it's almost inexcusable for us not to get it over the line. So let us know, or let me know, everybody, in the comments down below, your thoughts on this, whether you agree, disagree at any point. If you feel like I'm missing something, please feel free to let me know in those comments. Smash that like button for me as well, too. But I'm going to go quickly into some of the things that I've just always really liked about Eze, and I think one of the very obvious ones that you might probably pick out yourself is just of how brilliant of a dribbler he is. And I saw that way back in the day during his time at QPR and even during his first season or two at Crystal Palace. I think that's what really popped kind of to me, or at least kind of, stuck out to me about his game. Is just how good of a dribbler he really is. I think what makes him special is how he gets out of really tight and difficult situations. Oftentimes you'll be watching Eze and he has 2-3 players around him, and then he'll figure his way out either through a beautiful little pass through the lines of the players, or he'll find a fancy move or feint or something that gets him past guys in those difficult situations. And his ball retention is really quite special, right? He'll be in difficult situations, yet he'll still find a way to not lose it. He'll still find a way to get it to a teammate or just to get out of it all by himself. And I think we could really take advantage of that actually in this Ange Postecoglou system, where oftentimes you'll see guys like Maddison, guys like Sonny being doubled up on, having a lot of the attention of the opponents being drawn onto them. But if you had a guy like Eze, who's just a real master at getting out of tight areas and tight situations, he'll just draw naturally a lot of pressure and a lot of sort of attention onto him, which then in turn I think would actually allow for more space for Maddison, more space for players like Sonny, or more dangerous players, to work and have less of that burden, less of that stress of having to take it all on themselves. So by coming into this team, EBERECHI, I actually think he makes life a lot easier for some of the other players in our team just by all the attention he would be drawing. Another thing I would add is he's actually a much better finisher now, I think, over these last few years. I think that's something he has improved on in his game. Left foot, right foot, I think he could finish with both. Really has a much stronger right foot, of course, than he does his left foot, but he still can finish with either, and he has a good long shot on him, can really hit them hard. Also, too, I think he's not afraid to shoot when given the opportunity to, and that's because he's not only the creative maestro for Crystal Palace, but he's actually one of the goal-scoring clinical players too, or he's one of their talisman. I think before Mateta went on that real hot goal-scoring streak, it pretty much was only Elise as well as Eze as the guys who I would have figured would be the players that Crystal Palace fans would be expecting to score, the guys that they rely on to score. And that's a hard ask, right? Where you have to be not only the creative hub, have to be the creative maestro, but then also you have to be the guy that puts away the chances that you're creating as well, which I don't think is easy. And I think Eze has actually taken on that responsibility quite well. And I'm not sure if that's the case with some of our own Spurs players. Either they're the goal scorer or they're the creator, not usually having to be both. And I think having a guy who knows how to be both could be really helpful to us. And that's what kind of gets me into one of the big problems that Dave and I felt like we needed to solve this last summer actually was, or this last season, should I say, was it felt like our wingers as well as some of our midfielders, we were missing kind of the consistency in the creativity. It felt like, especially with the wingers, Johnson, Kulusevski, and Werner, that there were games when they had really good games in the creative front, they were really influential, and then in others, they really struggled to be influential. Either they weren't taking on their man enough, or they weren't getting it down the byline to whip in crosses, or just simply always looking to kind of pass it back sideways to where it came from. I feel like Eberechi is the complete opposite of that. He's very positive, relentless at taking on his man, relentless at going after his opponent and trying to take it past him, but then also just has that kind of daringness about him to make something happen, and he'll be solving the creativity problems from this last season. But I think he also solved some of the finishing problems, where it's not just scoring. Actually, it felt like what Johnson, Kulusevski, Werner all had in common was they would panic in those big pressure moments. They would panic when they had the chance to score, when they had the chance to get an assist or whatever. Of course, they did pick up some goals and assists, and it's fair play to Johnson for picking up 15, but still, I felt like he did miss plenty more chances this last season, and felt like it was really frustrating to watch as a fan. And Eze, I just think, will have that bit more of that clinical edge to him than what some of our wingers did this last season. And those were the two big areas that Dave and I felt like we needed to address, was in the front three at least, was the finishing problem. A lot of chances that were being wasted either with the final pass or the final finish or just the final decision, but then also just creative problems in general, just not being creative enough or consistently enough. And I think Eze easily solves those problems for us. Now, if we were to compare Eze to James Maddison here, our main number 10, you can see that what they have different in their game is the fact that Eze is a far better dribbler. At least that's part of his game that he looks towards taking advantage of more than Maddison does. I think it's just because he's even more agile, has an even better and even quicker turning radius than what Maddison does on that half turn when receiving it, Eze. But also he has that, I just think, that extra bit of je ne sais quoi, or that extra bit of just flair to his game when carrying the ball, when it taking past opponents. What Maddison really excels in, and we didn't see it towards the end of the year, but we definitely saw it in the beginning of the season. He has that eye for pass. He knows how to take risks. When he sees a run, he will play the pass and get it to his player. And just felt like towards the end of the season, we weren't seeing that enough, but we do know he is a creative hub. And what really is brilliant about his game is that he's a goal-scoring number 10, just like Eze here, but he has that eye for a pass. And don't get me wrong, I don't think Eze, has a bad pass either. But if I were to say what makes them different from each other, is maybe Eze more of a ball-carrying, creative number 10, while also being a goal scorer like Maddison. But Maddison maybe more of a eye for a pass kind of number 10 guy. And I think it's really good to have both, because when Maddison has faltered or when his form starts to dip, I think like it did last season, or if he picks up another injury, it'll be really nice to have someone like Eze who can fill in, and it won't be such a dramatic drop-off in quality. In fact, you could argue, at least I might argue, because I really rate Eze this highly, that maybe there would be an improvement in some areas from Eze. I actually think he would give Maddison a real ride, or at least some real competition for that number 10 spot. So it really does seem like it'd be a great signing, not only for the midfield, but also then for the wing, because Eze can play on the wing, and he can play on the left mostly. And what I feel like he would bring is something similar to Kulusevski, but it just would be better in a few of those areas. Because Kulusevski, what he does well is he drops deep, and he can hold up the ball in those half spaces, and he can hold the ball up with his back to goal. Eze, I say, can do the same, right? He's strong enough that he can hold the ball up with his back to goal, but then he's clever enough once he receives it to take it past his man quite quickly after that. And Kulusevski the same. It's just that I think Eze is even better at doing it. He has that quicker turning radius. He also, I think, has more intelligence about what's around him when receiving the ball, has even more flair to his game, even more tricks up his sleeve than Kulusevski does. And that's saying a lot, because Kulusevski certainly is a very tricky player. And I think he has a better passing range and finish on him than what Kulusevski does. I think Kulu, his best attributes really is his hold-up play and his dribbling. What has been missing this last season, I think, was that final ball or that final pass, or that sort of that passing range, because lots of times it did feel like he would get past a player, he would make the right movement or make the right decision, and then it would just kind of all fall apart from kind of a poor execution of a pass or a finish. And that's what gets me on to the next part with Kulusevski, is I always felt like his finishing this last year really was missing, just spurned so many chances. He's played through in behind a couple of times, clean through, and then never ended up in a goal. And I think if we had someone like Eze in those areas, more likely or not, it's going to end up in a goal more times than what it did with Kulusevski. So what I like about Eze is, if he were to play ahead of Kulusevski, he offers something similar in the hold-up play department, in the creative department, in the dribbling area, but also I think is slightly better in the finishing and passing range than what Kulusevski has. So it'd be nice to have someone who can offer something similar to Kulu, but then just still be slightly better, in my opinion. And then if you were to argue or compare, Eze with the likes of Brennan Johnson, feel like there's not much of a comparison here because they're just such different players. Johnson, far more reliant on his pace, far more reliant on getting in behind than what Eze does. And Johnson, too, I think has perhaps more of that, I don't know what you call it, but it's that, anticipation to be at the right place at the right time, whether you rate him or whether you're hard on him or not, like I am. He does have that ability to just sort of be at the right place to put away a tap in or to put away the goal. And there's a real skill in that. And I'm not sure if Eze is totally that type of guy, whereas Brennan Johnson, at least last season, showed to be, especially late on in games. What they do differ in is just, I think, technical quality on the ball. I don't think Johnson is a very high grade technician of a footballer. He's far more reliant, I think, on some of his athletic areas of his game, like I said, with his pace. Whereas Eze, I think, is just an unbelievable technician. Far better first touch, far better ball carrier and dribbler than Johnson. There were a few times this year where we did see it kind of roll off Johnson's foot, even out of bounds from his first touch. That's just, kind of the type of players that we're comparing here. And what's nice, though, is that they just offer something very different. At Brennan Johnson, far more pace. Like I said, has that knack to be at the right place at the right time, to put in a tap in, to be that quick sort of guy to make a late run into the box. Whereas Eze is a far more creative outlet than what Johnson is. So it's just nice that we can have guys like Timo Werner and Johnson who offer something more similar to each other, and then we have guys like Eze and Kulusevski who offer something more similar to each other. It's good to have that comparison. It's good to have that difference, if you ask me. So just to summarize quickly there, I think what Eze is going to bring is he's going to help solve the creativity problems that we'd been missing from this last year from our wingers. Then he's also, I think, going to help solve some of the finishing, or at least some of the final decision problems that was happening with our wingers this last season, where it felt like they often panicked in the final moments and they would get it wrong either with the execution or just with this decision itself. I think Eze will really be much better in that area, just far more composed, far more cool with it. Just a creative beast, really. He's going to step into this team and I think be like another James Maddison, someone different who offers a slightly different style to his creativity than Maddison. But it really will be nice to have someone take on that responsibility more than what I think Johnson, Kulusevski, and Werner did this last season on the wings. It was a two-part problem for me, both finishing as well as creativity. I also really like the idea that a fluid front three could be made out of Eze. If Eze were to play on the left wing and then we had Maddison down the middle in the number 10, Sonny could have an opportunity to play out on the right. And I understand that Sonny hasn't played out there very often in his career. I just think it's a more natural position for him to play and to get Eze into the team. And also, I think it's actually an easier transition for Sonny than it was for him to play down the middle as sort of the hold-up play striker. I just never thought that suited Sonny's game. Don't get me wrong. I think he had to make a pretty good sacrifice to do that. I don't think he wanted to play that role all season. He just sort of made a sacrifice for us, and he did an all right job doing so. It's just that I didn't think it played totally to his strengths, to what he can bring, how effective he can be. And if he were to play on the right, I could see him being very effective. He knows how to cut in on his left. In fact, we've seen he has that left-footed curler, that left foot wand of a shot. We also know that on the left side, he whipped in some decent crosses with that left foot. So you could see him either, putting in a really good shot on goal with his left foot when cutting inside there, or he could kind of go for a kind of an in-swinging cross as well. Two, you could see him taking it down the byline on the right easily, just, taking it past his man down the flank and whipping in a good cross with his right. I understand, again, that it's not the ideal position for Sonny. It's just that I see him actually making an easier transition to the right than he would to striker. But then also Eze, I don't think would be as good of a right winger as what Sonny might be. So it makes sense to try to fit them all in somehow. But then I don't even think you're losing anything really, or you're hurting anybody's game, because what Eze is going to bring is he's going to bring more creativity, more ball retention. We're going to have, I think, more opportunities to make something happen because we have such a creative hub in him, and having him and Maddison playing off of each other, I think will be really dangerous. And we'll have guys that can drop deep, hold the ball up, and be able to drop into those half spaces that Sonny was having to do as a striker, which then allows him, I think, if he were playing on the right, to get more time to run in behind, think about more times to run behind the back line and see if someone can play him in behind, that sort of thing. Whereas this last season, I don't think Sonny had as many opportunities to really think about that, or even to really do that in general. So if you had someone like Eze in the team, you could really see him taking, some of that creative burden, some of that hold-up play burden off of guys like Sonny. Also, Richarlison, if he's back into the team, or if we were to get another striker, another big target man, hold up play type striker, you could see them also taking on some of that hold up play responsibility that's required in this Ange Postecoglou system. And if you had two guys that are doing that, two kind of creative hold up play type players like Eze, as well as, a striker, let's say a Tony or a Richarlison, again, more opportunities, more space for Sonny to run at his opponents, for him to also get in behind, that sort of thing. And that's where I really feel like his strengths do lie. So if we're able to get Eze into the team, weirdly, I think we can actually have a more dynamic, even more fluid front three, if you would. And last but certainly not least, we're going to talk about why this is a no-brainer business-wise. EBERECHI is a part of the CAA agency base, and if you didn't already know, that is the base, the agency base the majority of Spurs players are already a part of, and we nearly got him actually from QPR for around £20 million or 20 million euros when we had Pochettino in charge. So you could say that the foundations between the representatives of Eze, as well as him and the club, have already been well established, or at least there are foundations there that we can build with. We also already need more English homegrown talent. Yes, we did bring in Madison as well as Johnson this last summer, but I felt like we still needed more, and we still need to continue to add. It's been a problem of ours for some time, not having real good quality enough English homegrown talent to pick from in our team. And then also, he's from the Greater London area. He's born around the Greater London area. His family still lives around London. And if he didn't want to leave the city and pack up everything, move his family, move his friends, all that type of stuff that can come with a big move to a new country or a new city in England, he could actually keep all of his contacts, all of his connections, his whole life essentially. He doesn't really have to change too much if he were to move to Tottenham. And you could see that being definitely an interesting factor, at least an attractive factor for him. Also, he has close friendships and connections within the team and the squad. We know that him and Sonny, right, share a Burberry contract with each other, are well familiar with each other's work. I think he also has a friendship with Madison and maybe some other players in the team. So it does look like he's not even unfamiliar. He has friendships, it looks like, within the Tottenham Hotspur squad. And, if Daniel Levy or if any of the Spurs board were to be reluctant about spending as much as £60 million or £70 million, we technically spent more on Richarlison as well as Ndombele than we likely would on EBERECHI. And I think EBERECHI is far more of a proven player, far more of a proven target than what those two were when we were trying to bring them in. And then also the last two things are Spurs did look like they were at least trying to lure his family, lure his representatives over in the last game, and where they wined and dined him at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium the last time Crystal Palace did come over to our place. And it looks like Spurs have already been establishing those contacts, or at least making it clear that they are very interested in the player. And then also, too, he was released by Arsenal's academy, which should be a little extra bit of motivation, a little extra bit of vengeance if he were to use that in an upcoming North London derby if he were to play for Spurs. But those are all the extra reasons, business-wise, why I actually think this shouldn't really be something that should get in the way. In fact, I think all the normal roadblocks or obstacles have actually been pretty much burned down or made it quite easy for us in this pursuit of EBERECHI. So pretty much no excuses available to Daniel Levy and such for not getting this one over the line, if they really do see this, of course, as a high priority target this summer. But I'm going to leave it there. Everybody, do smash that like button for me, please. Get in those comments as well if you felt like disagreed or agreed with anything I might have said. But I will leave you there. Also, too, if you want to become a member, feel free to check that out, because there is also another video that I recorded about Conor Gallagher and why I think Ange has prioritized him, or at least really shown a liking towards him. Whether you like him or not, I at least give the reasons for why I think Ange Postecoglou does really seem to like Conor Gallagher. But I'll leave you there. Come on, you Spurs. In the big Ange we trust. We never stop, and I'll be seeing you.